It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, a show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman, LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you on January 27th, a Monday. The LA Galaxy deep in the throes of preseason now. 2-a-days, lots of training, lots of updates, lots of fun stuff for you. Going to give you a quick little view into the LA Galaxy and what they're doing right now this week, and sort of what you can expect for the coming weeks as we get moving forward a little bit more. And yes, new theme music on Monday nights as well. If you complained about the music on Thursday night, you can complain about the music on Monday night as well. Let's see, in order to help me get through all this wonderful stuff is the panda himself, the infirmed panda himself, Mr. Kevin Baxter. How you doing, buddy?
What the hell was that?
Are you okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I just am not the music. I have to put the other music back in my mind just to get fired up.
Is that what you have to do? Yeah. That music always got you fired up?
That's right. This one I just don't feel the same.
Well, you're also sick, so that's probably what.
I'm very sick. I'm very sick. In fact, I was telling you before we went on, I have an interview scheduled with some U.S. national team players tomorrow, and I would prefer to do those in person. It's a hassle for me, given where I live out here in southern Bakersfield.
Right.
It's a hassle to get to the StubHub Center in the morning, or Dignity Health Sports Park as it's known now. So I like to go out there because I like to see the players, and I like to let them know that I thought it was important enough to speak to them that I came out. However, I'd be coughing and sneezing around everybody, and the last thing I need is for me to start coughing and sneezing and then have Julian Araujo or Walker Zimmerman not be able to play in the game, and then they blame me for it. So just as a matter of precaution, I have asked whether I can do those interviews over the phone, and been told that I can. So that's good.
That is good. Well, hopefully, I know you're barely hanging in there, so I'm glad that you could stop by and help us. I don't know. Weird week already, Kevin. I don't know. I do know what it is. Obviously, SoCal under a little bit of a cloud, and I wanted to at least touch on it a little bit because I feel like if we don't talk about it, we're not acknowledging sort of the time and the place that we're at. But obviously, the death of Kobe Bryant, which is, in my mind, not just a Southern California story, but a Southern California soccer story when you really break it down and get into the heart of it as it goes. Everybody knows that Kobe Bryant was a huge soccer fan, grew up in Italy as his dad played basketball in Italy and was a big fan of AC Milan. So that was his first team, and I think there's even reports out that AC Milan is going to wear a black Kobe badge, and they said that they're going to do it regardless of whether the league says it's okay or not. It's always that Italian sort of argumentative nature in them. They're like, we don't care if the league says yes, we're wearing it anyway. So you have this guy, Kobe Bryant, who's larger than life, who had been to Galaxy games, who is such a guy in the Southern California area, and I say Southern California because not just L.A., where he was a Laker, but also Orange County, down where I live, and his passing is rippling through soccer players, basketball players, professional sports, and people who cover those sports here in Southern California.
Yeah, soccer was really always his favorite sport. I don't know how much he talked about that, but it clearly was. He would go to the World Cup games and stuff. Always was in the basketball off season. Attended, Olympic when he played for the Olympic team. I think he'd go to some of those Olympic soccer matches as well. I don't know whether you saw the video. Neymar, after scoring his second goal in PSG's win yesterday, ran over to the touchline and made the number 24 with his fingers. That was his tribute to Kobe, and then he pointed to the sky. There was also a video of Kobe at a PSG training session where he engaged in a little bit of a kickabout, and it was he was really good.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the number of players on social media, soccer personalities and players that have weighed in with their remembrances, I mean, it runs the gamut. We have Julian Green, former U.S. national team player, DeMarcus Beasley, teams like Roma, Barcelona, Robbie Rogers, Chicharito. We have Dos Santos's weighing in,
right?
Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Cristiano Ronaldo, Carly Lloyd, Gareth Bale, Steve Nash, another guy who played basketball but really loved soccer, Chris Smalling, Jerome, we have Boateng.
Yep, that's right.
Everybody. And Robbie Rogers shared a memory about when the first time that he met Kobe Bryant was during the Olympic opening ceremony when Kobe marched in and was with the U.S. national soccer team. And in Robbie's recounting, he couldn't have been nicer. He talked to all the players, stayed there, took as many pictures as they wanted, signed autographs. Did not come off as, it was at the Beijing Olympics, and said he did not come off as a star at all, and that he was very excited to come out and watch that soccer team play.
Yeah, you also have to tie in the fact that I think one of Kobe Bryant's last media appearances was at MLS Media Day whenever they sort of announced the partnership with Kobe Bryant's body armor drink, I believe. And so that is the official drink, I believe, of Major League Soccer, if I got all that. Honestly, I ignored it at the time, and now you sit there and go back and say, oh, that would have been an interesting thing to sort of see. But he sat down with, ESPN and some of the other, Spanish language, reporters to talk about soccer and to talk about the importance of
in
soccer.
English and Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the guy speaks Italian and Spanish and English. I think he speaks some Chinese as well.
He's big in China. Well, did you see Alicia Rodriguez, who is one of the best freelance soccer writers in Southern California now? I believe is writing for LA Galaxy Confidential, I think, or a number of other outlets with Bleacher Report. Anyway, she had a chance to talk to Kobe at Media Day, and I think she was the one that asked him if he had a favorite team in LA, whether it was the Galaxy or LAFC, and he smiled and said, "Ask me a better question."
Right.
Which I thought was really a good and interesting comeback.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, he understands his place and sort of what was going on in the soccer world and around it. And I think that, you saw him. We've seen him at LA Galaxy trainings holding up a Steven Gerrard, kit. He's been at LA Galaxy games. Quite honestly, Gigi Bryant as well. She's been to LA Galaxy games. So, I mean, it's a big vacuum. It's a big hole, and it just sucks. The fact that, really they call Staples Center the house that Kobe Bryant built, which is an AEG property, and obviously AEG, the owners of the LA Galaxy. If you saw at Dignity Health Sports Park, they put out a picture and a photo today that showed, the message board on the outside that's sort of right next to the team store that had, a picture of Kobe Bryant and, basically his date of birth and his date of death and sort of, is carrying on in remembrance of that. So there's a lot of tie-ins to this. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. If you look at Kobe Bryant, his birthday is August 23rd. And this particular August 23rd this year, Kevin, will be in El Tráfico, hosted at Dignity Health Sports Park, where the LA Galaxy will face off against LAFC. I mean, there's just little... I don't know. That's just more of a coincidence than anything else, but I saw that and thought that was kind of an interesting little take.
Well, there may be another take on that too. I realize by August the emotion will have gone away, and it's not that we're ever going to forget Kobe, but what we're feeling right now is not going to be the same as what we're going to be feeling in August. And one of the things that touched me so much last night was watching the other basketball teams played and how they would purposely take a 24-second violation because Kobe wore 24, and then his other number was 8. So then the team that would win the ball would then take an 8-second backcourt violation. So They took violations of 24 and 8 seconds, Kobe's two numbers. You're right, that game, El Tráfico at the Dig, is on the 23rd of August, 8:23. I saw some fans talking online today on Twitter about, what if they moved that game to one day? What if they moved it back one day and played it on 8/24?
Yeah. No,
Kobe's two numbers. I asked the Galaxy about that, and they had said that they had not discussed it, that they hadn't thought about it. My guess is they're probably not going to do that because, again, by August, this may have all sort of gone away. But, I mean, if they were to make that decision now and to, make that Kobe Bryant Day, and I think they'd get a lot of pats on the back if they did it right now.
Well, apparently, and I saw this tweeted out, I believe, by the LA City official Twitter account, 8/24 is already Kobe Bryant Day. So it is already in, I think that was back in 2016, they actually officially named 8/24 in the city of Los Angeles anyway. That's Kobe Bryant Day. So anyway, it's one of those things that I don't want to sit here and I don't want to spend a lot of time on. I'll be honest, because he lived down in Orange County, I have a bunch of people who I know who knew him. I've heard tons of stories about Vanessa, his wife, coming in to different stores and different places where friends of mine own or operate and are there, and how nice everybody is, and they really are a part part of this, Orange County community down here, as well as, you look at the Orange Coast, the OCC, the Orange Coast College, community college baseball coach. He was killed. His daughter was killed. His wife was killed in this. There was another lady from Orange County who was a basketball coach at a private school down here as well. So it is, I feel like it's pretty close to me down here, and it bums me really out. I was not a huge basketball fan, Kevin, and I don't pretend to ever be a basketball fan, but I grew up watching Kobe Bryant play for the Lakers, and I enjoyed watching him win those championships, and I enjoyed watching him be dominant in the sport where, at some point people thought maybe he wasn't going to be that dominant force. He came in being cocky, saying, I'm going to be better than Michael Jordan, and he was right. But it took a little while for that to sort of play out. But it was that work ethic. So it's just a little too raw for I think a lot of people. But I think that the soccer connection has really sort of made this a much wider connection than if he was just a basketball player who didn't talk about loving soccer and was probably one of the first major sport athletes, and certainly the biggest star, if you go back 20 years ago, Kevin, that was unabashed in his love for soccer. So it's certainly a story that crosses all lines, and certainly here in Southern California, something that we can at least talk about for a little bit.
I heard both, speaking of Araujo and Zimmerman, both of them made very eloquent statements about Kobe, and sort of what you're talking about, that he transcended basketball. They both talked about, both of them speaking on different days. Julian spoke today, and Walker Zimmerman spoke yesterday. They talked about the Mamba mentality, and Walker Zimmerman talked about how he heard, he said we all grew up hearing stories about how dedicated Kobe was, and the fact that he would do sessions in the gym at 3 a.m, and he'd be working out at 3 a.m. And Walker Zimmerman said, as a young player, he would tell himself, if Kobe can do it, if Kobe can work out at 3 a.m, if Kobe feels the need to work out at 3 a.m, then I better work out when it's dark, or when it's uncomfortable, or when it's raining or whatever. And he used that to motivate him. And so it is one of those things that transcends sports and probably transcends professions too. I mean, if you're the CEO of a company and you look at Kobe Bryant as being the CEO of basketball, and he's working out at 3 a.m, certainly that you can cut your night short and get to work early too.
Right. No, all that makes sense. Very, very, sad time in here. It'll be interesting to see sort of how teams around Los Angeles sort of remember Kobe Bryant and all those who were killed in the helicopter crash. So all, just sad things right now. But we'll move on. You talk about Kobe training at 3 a.m. I don't think the Galaxy are training at 3 a.m. right now, Kevin.
Almost. They training twice a day.
They are doing 2-a-days, which we expected again under Valdecantos. This was sort of the same thing that happened last year. And we were watching and sort of preparing and readying ourselves for that as well, that this would happen again, that they would be working out, twice a day for the foreseeable future. And so that's what it seems like right now. We don't have a great weekly schedule supposed to come out on Mondays, and so then we find out what everything else is going on through the rest of the week. But we know 2-a-days. Larry Morgan was out at training today. They were actually training out at the track and field stadium today. The reason they were training there is because U.S. Soccer is now back and in town for their February 1st game, and that means Sebastian Lletget and Julian Araujo, both LA Galaxy players, back in at Dignity Health Sports Park, but they're playing on the fields out front. And so that's sort of why the switch is going on right now. So track and field stadium for the LA Galaxy team, with the U.S. men's national team over on the U.S. soccer fields, which is where the Galaxy usually trains. So that's what you're seeing. We also saw last week, Kevin, a little beach trip. I had theorized that perhaps there would be a beach trip, and there was a beach trip. So the Galaxy doing a little off-site training, as they call it, as well, and so they have that. But one guy who apparently is not training with everybody else, Kevin, is Chicharito, and you have a little update on him.
Yeah, apparently his visa is not the visa paperwork is not done yet. The Galaxy not expecting that until next week. They're hopefully getting it early next week. I am told, but I have not visually confirmed this, but I'm told that Chicharito is now working on his own off to the side. I don't know what the rules are. I know until the paperwork's completed, he can't work with the team, but I don't know if that means the work he does off the side, whether he no coaches can be around or no teammates, or I don't know how that works.
That's an employment thing more than anything. It's not even necessarily, I believe, like a FIFA thing. Usually FIFA just demands that you have an ITC on that, the International Transfer Certificate. But the visa, to actually be employed in the United States, you need that P1 visa in order to be employed. And so technically he can't do quote-unquote work until he has that visa. So I wonder if just training off to the quote-unquote side. All of these are in quotation marks. I fully imagine that Chicharito's out there at least doing something.
I wonder what passport he has. And this is a serious question. I would assume he has a Mexican passport, although he did spend a lot of time in, he's been in Europe for 10 years now. He was at Manchester United, in England, then he was played in Germany, and he's been in Spain twice. And I asked that seriously because, as a Mexican, when a lot of this stuff the paperwork goes through, some pencil pusher looks at it and it comes up as a category. Mexican man wants to seeks job, and he has a job in the United States and wants to immigrate and needs a visa paperwork. And I'm just wondering, given the current political climate, whether that could cause Chicharito some problem, where if he had an English or German passport, it might make it easier for him.
Yeah, I would say that normally if those go in blind, in terms of if you just turn them in and it was nobody, I happen to know that the Galaxy are actually very good at getting visas and getting paperwork on players, and I have to imagine that they have some sort of contact at the embassies in order to push this paperwork through. So that way it's somebody of knowledge, at least understands where it's coming from, in these areas. But I'll tell you, one of the things you're seeing around the league right now, Kevin, is that teams are going hard after those green cards. Lots of people are turning, players who come in over that come in on P1 visas and turning them into green cards, so the legal residents. And that means that you can remove the international tag from them in Major League Soccer, and you're seeing teams do that all throughout Major League Soccer, and seeing a bunch of announcements on that. And one reporter commented and basically said, things that used to take 12 to 18 months now can be done in 8 to 6 months. Really shrinking that timeline down. And my question is, for a team like the Galaxy, who used to be so good at doing that green card trick, Juninho, Marcelo Sarvas, I'm sure there's some others. I think Robbie Keane, possibly even David Beckham, all got green cards. So are the Galaxy not playing that game anymore? Because there's certainly some guys on this team you would expect to be ready for those green cards. Jonathan Dos Santos certainly pops to mind, first of all, more than anything. And so if you sit there and say, okay, you have some guys who have been in the United States for a while, if you're not using that as a roster tool, then what's the holdup? Other teams are, and they're gaining an advantage from it. So are the LA Galaxy also going to do that to try to gain an advantage out of it?
Well, and it behooves the player to do that. A green card is not citizenship. You're not renouncing your citizenship in Ghana or Mexico or Germany or wherever you come from. It's a green card. You can go back to your home country, and again, you're not renouncing that citizenship, but it does give you the ability and the right to stay here legally long term, if that's what you choose to do. And if you want to play here, or in Chicharito's case, and let's with the Dos Santos brothers as well, I would guess with Carlos Vela, I think these guys they're all very young guys. When you think about, maybe not as players, but in their age, they're all in the around 30. These guys are going to be going back and forth across the border probably for the rest of their lives, whether they're coming here for award ceremonies because they have a house here, whatever it is. That green card is going to make that a lot easier.
Yeah,
and same would go for every player. It's one fight I used to have with baseball agents back in my baseball days, when they set some of these Cuban defectors up in third countries rather than immediately get them immigration status in the U.S. And I always thought that was short-sighted, because by setting up their residency in the Dominican Republic or Nicaragua or wherever else they did it, those guys could be deported at any time. Whereas if you bring them to the United States, the agents would say, well, they're going to get millions of dollars more when they sign a contract. But how many millions of dollars is it worth to be able to stay legally in the United States? I think that's a pretty good deal too.
Yeah, and outside of any of just those, just the roster ramifications are huge, especially for an LA Galaxy team right now that is currently one player over an international
See, you're thinking about the team, and I'm thinking about
you're thinking about people,
the welfare of these guys' families.
You're way better person than me, obviously.
I'm
just talking about, hey, if you're waging I should say soccer war, and I shouldn't even say that because there actually was a soccer war. If you're out there trying to be the best, MLS, then you have to use all of these roster mechanisms to your favor, and the Galaxy seem to have a perfect chance to use some of these roster things, and they need to do it because other teams are doing it, and you're seeing it. But hey, the other thing that I saw you tweet out today was also about Chicharito, and it talked about, we've talked about the impact his signing has had on just the SoCal region and the regionality of this. North America is an important part of sort of, the Javier Hernandez story and how successful he's going to be. And I know on Thursday we talked about how many reporters were there and how many cameras were there and how it was, a really crazy scene. Thinking about going back to Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who is, as I've said many times, is a bigger world figure than Chicharito is. There were not the same cameras there that were there for Javier Hernandez on his media day, so they're having a real impact, but that seems to also be now impacting the LA Galaxy's bottom line in a positive way, which we kind of assumed would be, but you have some numbers.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that Southern California is home to 6 million Mexican Americans. It's the largest concentration of Mexicans outside Mexico City. So there's a ready-made audience here. That's why Liga MX games do so well here as opposed to European soccer or even MLS. So what's happened in the last 2 weeks, so this goes back to when we were all writing about Chicharito signing, but before there was a contract that had been turned in. So this is the lead up to the signing, and then the week following the signing. During that period, first of all, remember last year with Zlatan, the Galaxy had a 5% decline in average attendance. So that's with Zlatan, who's arguably the most dominant player in league history.
Right.
And they had a good season. They went to the playoffs. Attendance went down 5%. Since in the 2 weeks around Chicharito's signing, the team got 750 new season ticket packages, and the Galaxy have been kind of squirrely on the numbers there, but we know it's just south of 10,000 is their season ticket number. So 750, they're close to a 10% rise in season ticket sales just in the last 2 weeks. And they sold 2,500 individual game tickets in the last 2 weeks. That's pretty significant. It's just starting. And I think once, there's news of Chicharito on the field training, maybe practice games, friendlies, all that, I think that number's going to go up.
Yeah, it seems to be. And, it's interesting to try to measure that impact. We certainly talked about, the jerseys. And I was on a podcast last night talking to two guys, and one of them sort of came on and said, hey, I'll tell you what this means is that whenever my wife found out that Chicharito was signing for the LA Galaxy, she told me, okay, I want a jersey, and the two kids want a jersey, and I'm sure you want one too. He goes, so, if you think about it, the Galaxy got me for like $500 whenever you look at all the jerseys.
And who gets that money? I was told by a very high-ranking Galaxy official who would definitely know that Chicharito has side deals, as you would imagine, with all of his different marketers, just like Zlatan did.
Right.
But one of the deals he has is with Adidas, that it deals with the number of Galaxy jerseys with his name on it that gets sold. So every time you buy a Chicharito jersey, everybody out there, a little bit of that money goes right into Chicharito's pocket.
I mean, I feel like that's how it should always be whenever you look at some of these guys. I mean, why shouldn't Daniel Steres get a $20 bill every time somebody, sells one of his jerseys and somebody buys it? All of these things seem like, you're making money off the player. Why not? And we talked about, Chicharito and the $6 million base salary and how that certainly seems easy enough, by all accounts from people we've talked to get to that $7.5 million number pretty quickly. So,
well, I'm told now, and I'm the one spreading that $7.5 million, and so I need to clarify that. I went to a number of Galaxy people and asked them about that number, and I was told that it was all accurate. That $6 million was the base. That's true. We know that's true.
Right. And
that he could make more than 1.2 million, which would take him over Zlatan's number. That was the question. Is he going to make more than Zlatan? And they said, with the bonuses, which are all easily achievable, yes, he will go past Zlatan's. Now I'm told that he won't. That just the MLS money. Now, that may not. Maybe the everyone has to hide these figures, and I don't know why they do that. They don't do it in any other sport, but everyone is very careful about talking about the figures. Perhaps with the Adidas money, which we don't know what that will be, jersey sales, maybe he does get up to 7.5. And to me, that's part of the contract. He came to the Galaxy, and he's selling Galaxy jerseys. Therefore, that's money that he gets because he came to the Galaxy. Now, you can say, well, that comes from Adidas. It doesn't come from MLS. But yeah, he doesn't get that money unless he's with the Galaxy. So I think it all goes in one package. Anyway, I'm told that the 7.5 figure is not accurate. I have my doubts. I think when you add in the Adidas money, it probably is. But I'm going to back away from using that. I'm just going to stay with the $6 million base, and we'll see what happens after that.
All right. Well, that's fine. We can still.
We'll try to get his tax returns next year.
That's what we'll do. We'll do that.
If he runs for president, he has to turn them in.
Apparently not. So that's no. I mean, that's all interesting. If you're talking about 750 in the span of 2 weeks, Kevin, that's a large shift. That's a measurable difference. In just a small amount of time, and so is the 2,500 single game tickets as well. All of those, and we've talked about it for so long. In a stadium that holds 25,000, and let's just pretend that's the number because it makes math easier. For a stadium that holds 25,000, and Galaxy having season ticket holders of 10,000, right? Let's just give them 10,000 to call it that. That means that for every game, in order to be a sellout, you have to sell 15,000 individual tickets or tickets that are to groups or group sales or however you want to do that. But basically,
and they've done really well at that,
right? Amazingly well. I mean,
yes.
People, whenever you start putting the numbers in front of fans and start telling them what the Galaxy have to do for every single game in order for it to be, a sellout or close to a sellout, it makes a huge difference. A huge difference. With what they're able to do. So it's all those single games. It's all that ability to sort of sit there and really take this stuff and mold this into a sellout every time. And it's the sales there that are happening that makes that happen.
Well, the Galaxy have 3 of their first 4 games are home games. I'm going to predict right now that all of those games sell out.
Yeah.
But do they sell out in August and September? And I mean, that's a serious question. I think Chicharito is a phenomenon, and I think he's, as I just said, he's going to definitely goose attendance at the start. He already has. But is he, when you see Chicharito once, especially if you're, a Mexican League fan or Mexican national team fan, and so you want to see him play, do you then keep coming back, or do you see him once and then or twice, and then that's your fill, and then you don't come back anymore? I think that's the real question.
I think that's always been the question, Kevin. That's always been something that we've sort of watched. It was back in the David Beckham years as well, is how many people does David Beckham convert into an actual Galaxy fan? All these things are always the questions. It's, how many people did Giovanni Dos Santos convert? How many people did Robbie Keane convert? You have people who have this individual flair or famousness, especially like Chicharito, so big. Like I said, you're going to see some of the Chivas jerseys coming back into Dignity Health Sports Park because he played at Chivas in Mexico. That's a thing that's going to happen. And so can you convert those Chivas jerseys, though, to Galaxy jerseys? And that's where everything always goes in. I would say it's probably a lot less than the number people think it is. It certainly was during the Beckham years. I think it certainly was during Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane brought some people in, but how many people stayed Galaxy fans whenever Robbie Keane left? The same thing with Chicharito and Giovanni Dos Santos and everybody else. It's always about that conversion factor and trying to get that conversion factor and trying to convert those people into it. The argument has always been, well, of course they convert people into Galaxy fans, but what are those numbers actually? And I don't even know if they have those numbers or they'll ever have those numbers, but it's at least something that you have to discuss is what is the conversion rate here when you bring in a big star, he sells a bunch of jerseys, how many season tickets? And right now you're seeing that people are saying not just that Chicharito is a big enough name to garner them going to the stadium, Kevin. You're saying that people right now, at least 750 people, and whether it was a direct result of Chicharito or not, those are the numbers we're getting, 750 times they said we want to see him for 18 games or 20-something games, however many are included in the season ticket book.
Well, yeah, I think you said you don't know if they're for Chicharito. I don't think they're for Katai. I'm pretty sure they're for Chicharito. But this is kind of a ticket sale person's or a marketer's dream. What you always hear from people like that is we just want them to sample the product.
Right.
That's why they give food away at Costco. Sample the product, and we're convinced that it's so good that you are now going to spend money and come back. And it's the same in soccer, and we know the formula that works because we've seen it with the Galaxy, and we've seen it up the freeway with LAFC. 2 things, I think. One is a good team, a good product. Yes, they may have come to see Robbie Keane or David Beckham in those days, but they stayed because the team was so good and they were fun to watch and they were exciting and they won and, they were the best team. And it was, we all remember those times, 3 championships in 4 years with Robbie Keane. and Landon Donovan, I think people came back because the team was exciting and fun to watch. And then up the freeway, LAFC has a very good team, but I think what draws fans back there is the atmosphere with the 32-52. Now, the Galaxy have that this year. They're going to have a standing supporters section on the Victoria block. So, if the Galaxy can create that atmosphere and if the team can be exciting and win, people will come to see Chicharito and they'll say, you know what, I had a great time. And Chicharito hurts his ankle and can't play, they still come back. Because why? Because they had a good time. They saw good soccer. They had a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff about Dignity Health Sports Park. I mean, there's ample parking. It's fairly easy to get to. I mean, people talk about the stadium experience. There's a lot of positive things about Dignity Health Sports Park that if you go and sample it and you have a good time, I think you will come back. And so now the Galaxy have a chance to make that happen.
I think the Galaxy and even LAFC, I think they all fall under the same sort of rules, which is you have to have people you're interested in watching, and then the team has to be good. And if you have one of those things lacking, you're going to have a lack of attendance. And I think that goes true. That's usually true for most teams. I imagine that Atlanta United, if they weren't very good, and please, they panicked last year whenever they were stumbling, quote unquote, and I think they still won 2 trophies last year. But whenever you're looking at it, they stumbled to that. There was panic in that. But I think if you see Atlanta United have a couple off years, you're not going to get the 70,000 people at that stadium anymore. You're going to get 40 or 50. And that's just the way it goes, and that's the way it should go, quite honestly, is that the product on the field will still determine whether or not you are successful in the stands, and that seems like a hard and fast rule. Nobody goes to watch crappy soccer.
Well, and there's 2 other examples of that in Southern California that just occurred to me, which I'm not sure if any of our models work, because one of the things I'm saying that the DIG has going for it is, again, no social or no public transportation, but everyone in Southern California drives anyway. So, I mean, it's a lot of parking, easy to get to, 3 freeways right there. So that's great, and if you can get to the stadium and have a good time, you'll come back. But what is the team that leads all, baseball in attendance every year? And actually all sports, when you look at season attendance, it's the Dodgers. And they have an exciting team. I used to love going to watch Yasiel Puig and go and see Clayton Kershaw pitch. But, man, talk about a bad stadium experience. Yes. It's always so crowded. It's hard to get in and out. You spend more time in the parking lot trying to get out than you did watching the game, which is why everyone comes late and leaves early. Yet they sell 4 million tickets every year.
I know.
Down the freeway, the best player in baseball, Mike Trout, great stadium experience, easy to get to. They don't do nearly as well. So
no, they don't.
Who knows?
I think baseball's the only sport that doesn't worry about attendance as much as all the rest of them. There's too many baseball games, and there's too many midweek gotta get away games, which are played at like 1 p.m. And so I just don't think that their attendance. You'd see it in the NFL though. Like if there's a stadium, there's nobody there. There's panic, right? There's
Here's my theory. When you look at the stadiums, and MLS does this too, when you look at the soccer-specific stadiums, they're small. I understand they want to create an atmosphere. But when you look at baseball stadiums, 50 and 60,000 seat stadiums, like in Cleveland being replaced by 35,000 and 40,000 seat stadiums, 2 things I think happen in that. One is if you have fewer tickets, supply and demand, fewer tickets, those tickets can be sold for much more money. But the bigger thing is, if you can't get a ticket to the game, you're going to watch on TV. And as we know, sports is now run by the broadcasters. That's
yes.
where the revenue comes from, the TV rights. So if you tell, your broadcast partner, look, we're going to build a smaller stadium. There's going to be 20,000 people that used to go to all the games last year. They can't get in anymore because there's no more seats, and we're going to jack up the ticket prices. But your TV audience is going to swell because people still love our team. I mean, that's when you look at the marketing and the economics of sports, that's a win-win. The TV ratings go up. The TV broadcasters can charge more money for their product because the ratings are up. The team gets that money, and they create an atmosphere in the stadium that is much more exciting because the stadium is smaller, and 40,000 people in a 40,000 seat stadium is much better than 40,000 in a 60,000 seat stadium. That's my theory. I've never really tested it.
I was going to say, yeah.
It kind of holds together.
I mean, hey, I have theories that I believe are absolutely 100% true, that whenever you start testing them, I'm sure they fall apart. But that's sort of how you look at these things. Let's go on to a little bit more Galaxy news, a couple of different things. There's a new head of sports science. Phil Hayward has departed the Wolverhampton Wanderers of the English Premier League, so Wolves, to become head of sports science at Dignity Health Sports Park there.
Guess where he's from?
Where's he from?
Manchester. We had a long talk.
Oh, of course, Manchester. So that makes a lot of sense. And the bat phone is ringing. You have to answer that. Is this one of those where you have breaking news again?
No, I just picked up and put it down. It's probably a telemarketer.
That's usually what it is anyway.
We're going to leave that in?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Why not? This is you know what? It's raw. This is how it's supposed to go sometimes. But anyway, so Phil Hayward has come up. This is a guy who was in charge of the head of medical, or basically the head of sports science at Wolves for 11 and a half years, who departed Wolves for Los Angeles. By the way, I'm not saying Wolverhampton isn't as nice as Los Angeles, but I mean, there's clearly a quality of life to those two places. But he departs it while Wolves are in 7th place in EPL. I mean, you're talking about getting a guy where Wolves and certainly them climbing up the table, even though the English Premier League season is basically over already. If you look at that,
they could still get a European berth.
They could, and so, but you look at what Wolves does. So he left Wolves after 11 and a half years, and now is over with the LA Galaxy. He was actually pictured, and I think in an Associated Press photo, or it was during the Chicharito thing, he was actually pictured in there, and then that sort of came up, and that's why it was sort of put out there. I did confirm with the LA Galaxy. It is true. So Phil Hayward has now become the head of sports science for the LA Galaxy, which is an interesting position, especially when you realize that injuries certainly took their toll over the last couple seasons. So perhaps the LA Galaxy trying to upgrade in those. This doesn't mean anything in terms of, Javier Valdecantos is still there. That hasn't changed anything at all, as a matter of fact. But the sports science department for the LA Galaxy, Kevin, continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So sports medicine and science department is starting to swell. Whenever I first started covering the LA Galaxy, I think there were probably like 4 guys. As you look at it now, I don't know. It looks like 10 or 12 because you have head strength and conditioning coach. You have Javier Valdecantos, the performance coach. You have William Sparks, the sports scientist. You have Brooke Ellison, the sports performance dietitian. You have Nicolette Leffler, the sports performance dietitian and education coordinator. You have Cesar Roldan, who is, I believe, the brother of
he absolutely is.
Yeah, of what's his name? Roldan.
Christian Roldan?
Yeah, Christian Roldan up in
the U.S. national team.
Yep. And he's the assistant athletic trainer. You have, I swear to God, I had a guy who had the last name of Shimuzu, and we called him Shimmy all the time. So I saw this, but he's a chiropractor and scar tissue specialist. You have a chief medical officer who's Bert Mandelbaum, who actually probably reconstructed at least two of the legs. There we go. Now we have a dog barking too.
Yeah, that's Chicharito.
There you go. See, we got all of it. So we have all of this stuff. So you look at this sports medicine continues to just grow and become bigger and bigger. It seems like the LA Galaxy doing more at least to try and continue that. So,
but you said bigger, and many times you said bigger. No one ever said better. It's got to get better.
It does.
There were just far too many injuries last year. And when you started talking at the start of this podcast about Valdecantos, I had to hold my tongue a little bit. But now you're giving me another in.
You're welcome.
They worked so hard last year under Valdecantos, and then the season started, and I just didn't see the benefit of it. I mean, all that hard preseason work, and then guys getting injured. Yes, they were fit, but were they overfit? And that I don't say that as a joke. I mean, sometimes you get athletes to they're on such a razor's edge between fitness and not weakness, but when you get that fit, sometimes I know a guy that was training to run a 4-minute mile, and all of his workouts were just great. And the day before the big race, when he was going to run 4 minutes for the first time, he stepped off a curb and broke his ankle. And it was just because he was so fit that his body was on that razor's edge that just one little blow, could really hurt him. And I don't know that necessarily happened. Maybe those injuries would have happened anyway, but I didn't really feel the benefit of Valdecantos last year with all these injuries. And perhaps that's why the sports science department is getting bigger. Teams realize we're spending all this money on players and they're getting hurt. Maybe we should throw a few $1,000s more over to sports science department to keep these assets, which they really are, on the field.
Yeah.
I will say another thing with the sports science and the medical department is I do think it's going to be a better place to be this year. Zlatan had his own guys in last year, which is fine. He had the money to do that. He had the reputation to do that, the career. This is not a knock on Zlatan. If that's what he wanted to do and that's what made him good, then he should do that. But it did cause a rift in the sports science department with some of the players saying, how come I can't see that guy? How come I have to see this guy? How come that guy has a private guy? This year, everyone, it sounds like they're going to be on the same page. I don't see Chicharito coming in with his own athletic training department.
I think it was well documented how much of a it's hard. It's an individual Zlatan Ibrahimovic was, in the locker room. We've always said that. That's both a positive and a negative for him. I don't see that as something that absolutely ruins everything. But whenever you have Chicharito, and certainly what he's saying is he comes to be a team player, and he doesn't care if he scores goals. Obviously, his job is to score goals. Obviously, he thinks he's going to score goals. But at the bottom line is, if the team wins, then he's a happy camper that he did his job and he got the team to win. And so that's his mentality. I think that this is going to be a much more cohesive, it already feels like it's already a more cohesive team.
Did you catch a little dig at Zlatan? And I'm not sure if he intended it that way.
No, I didn't. I think people are trying to find it like that. If you really, really want to connect it, I think he was taking a dig at people who saying that, he's coming for the money. I think that's where the dig is. He's saying no. He goes, I'm not somebody who's going to be here for a couple of years and not win things. I want to win things. I want to be here, and and I think he wants to be here for a long time. It certainly seems that way.
Yeah, it was just to remind people. He made a comment about how he didn't come here just to score a bunch of goals and leave after 2 years without winning anything. That he said, I prefer to score 20, 15, or even 10 goals and help this team get a championship.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you want to see that as shade to Zlatan, you can. But to me, where's the motivation for him to come in and try to chip at Zlatan? There's no positives for him to do that. And he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would do it. So in my mind, I throw that out. I saw people trying to make that a thing, and I'm just not one of those people who thinks it's a thing. It's hard. It's just like the retirement thing. I'm like, if you just put that within any context of the conversation that he had, then it makes 100% sense. And to me, if you're sitting there saying that makes you worried, that means that what you did was you read what somebody wrote about it, and you didn't watch the video and put it into context. Because in context, you put his retirement quote in there, and you're like, yeah, it makes sense, 100%.
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
I talked to Hercules Gomez from ESPN, former national team player who played a lot in Mexico, and I believe definitely played against Chicharito at some point. Anyway, he was telling me that he believes Chicharito is going to score about 15 goals, which is about what I have. That's kind of my over-under too. But he also said, he agreed with me that he thinks that Chicharito scoring 15 goals, and you look at Zlatan, that's 30, that's only half, but that the team is going to be way better with Chicharito for a number of different reasons. So, Chicharito does make the point that his idea is to score fewer goals but have a better team, and everyone seems to kind of agree that that's likely to happen, that the team is just going to play in a different way, and you're not going to make up those 30 goals that Zlatan took, or the 43 goals. The team's lost 43 goals since last year, and they only scored 58 with players leaving. You're not going to make up all those goals with Chicharito or any of the other additions, Katai or anyone else, but the team is going to play different, and they're going to be better. And people wondering about the defensive liabilities, yeah, the team really needs some help on the back line. They definitely need another center back given the schedule they're going to play. But when I talked to Dennis and other people around the team, their response was, the defense is affected by a lot of different things, not just the four guys that you put out there. It's the style of play. Do your frontline guys track back? Do your midfielders play defense? How does, what's the style of play of the team? That's going to change with Chicharito too. It's not going to be just winging high balls into the box for Zlatan. The team is going to play a lot different too. That's going to affect the defense. And Dennis seems to think that the defense is going to be a team game this year. And so the four guys on the back line are not as important as the team scheme. And he believes that it's going to be better this year, even if he doesn't sign another guy. Yeah, which I hope he does.
Yeah. I think he has intentions to. We'll see if that ends up happening. It makes some sense. You certainly see it. I'll say for all of the FIFA players out there, all of our video gamers, all of our gamers out there, I know that you love this. I'll tell you that they did update the rosters. Chicharito is on that roster now. Insua is on the roster. Katai is on the roster. So you could basically start putting your formations together as you see fit and see how that works on the video game, which I may have done a couple times to sort of see how that all works out. So
how did it work?
Actually, so the funny thing is that I was playing before Chicharito was added to the roster, and it was a little tough to get any sort of anything going for you there. So it was difficult to score some goals with Chicharito on the roster, obviously, and playing in a 4-3-3. It did some things, and again, this is a video game. I don't know how much we can take away from it, but it did open my eyes to something is that the late run and Jonathan Dos Santos in sort of an attacking 4-3-3 formation really sets up Jonathan Dos Santos and Sebastian Lletget to be in positions to score goals.
Well, I'm interested. You got me really interested in this. What was your starting lineup and what was your formation? You said 4-3-3. How did you set that up?
Yeah, so Chicharito was basically at the top in the center, right? So he's there.
Center forward.
Yeah, he's your center forward. And then on the left-hand side, you would have Pavone. On the right-hand side was Katai. So those are your attacking three who would also fall back into it. Your center positions there are Sebastian Lletget, Joe Corona, and Jonathan Dos Santos, which all makes sense. And then your backline four is Insua on the left. You would have Pipo Gonzalez right now as a center back, and you have Daniel Steres as a center back, and you would have Rolf Felcher, I believe, at least for now, being the starting right back over there, and then maybe perhaps Julian Rajo coming in. But that's how it sets up. And
where's Shelvik?
Shelvik, I told you. Did you know the bet that's going on with me right now? I said that if Shelvik is still on this roster by the time, and I can't believe I keep saying it, I should probably hope people forget. If Shelvik is still on the roster by the time the season starts, that I have to do a show without my shirt. I said there's no way it's happening. I'm telling you it's not happening. He's not going to be on this roster. The Galaxy have telegraphed it in every possible way they could possibly have. It's just a matter of actually moving him and getting him.
Whoever made that bet with you is clearly it was blind because nobody wants to see you without your shirt on.
I know. Well, that was sort of me, was the whole thing. I made it for everybody. I'm punishing everybody who has to watch that if that's the case. The white balance is going to be very difficult to sort of put together here. It's going to be
speaking of Norway.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what we have. So anyway, that's what it is. But I'm telling you that it does. It's funny because it's a video game. But whenever you're playing, there's some tactical things that happen in the game still that are probably pretty accurate. And one of those things is that Jonathan Dos Santos and Sebastian Lletget, I've found, have been a lot more open at the top of the box whenever you have runs from Chicharito to the front or back post, and whenever you have service coming in from Katai and Pavone on the other sides, that opens up those guys to be there. Even Joe Corona scoring goals from there as well. So, I mean, I think that's where you have to expect the LA Galaxy to get better, is they have the attacking front three, which I think is envious of most teams in Major League Soccer, but what's behind that? Always having a strong spine seems to be important for the LA Galaxy, and it's important for most teams. So with Jonathan Dos Santos in there, you can say, yeah, with Sebastian Lletget, if he can take a step forward offensively, then yeah. And then you have to look at who your center backs are and do you have a strong enough spine down that way. And I think that's the big question right now, is who else they're going to bring in to sort of solidify that defense, and whether it's anybody.
Yeah, they need depth. And Sebastian Lletget can score. He last year, I don't think he was asked to score. I mean, I think he's proven that he can score if that's the way you want to use him, and he cannot score if you want to use him in a different way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, the LA Galaxy didn't announce this, but I can confirm it. The LA Galaxy look to be playing, actually, the LA Galaxy will be playing on a closed-door scrimmage against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Vancouver put it up on their website, which sort of had everybody start looking around and asking questions. Closed-door scrimmage at Dignity Health Sports Park on Tuesday, February 4th. That's just 4 days before the open training, which happens at Dignity Health Sports Park, and the debut of the Victoria Block, and all of that should be done and open for everybody to see. So that's an LA Galaxy open training and post-training barbecue, Saturday, February 8th. Make sure you RSVP, talk to your season ticket guys, any of that, so that way you can get in there.
It's going to be a lot more crowded.
It is. It's going to...
A lot more season ticket holders.
There's going to be... I already think that's going to be a pretty big event. The jerseys themselves, I think, get released on February 2nd, and that's MLS-wide. Now, granted, everybody already knows what the LA Galaxy home kit looks like, because they got to release it whenever they signed Chicharito. But this looks like, this will be when all of them will be officially available February 2nd. So that sort of goes February 2nd, February 4th, February 8th. Basically, we're trying to tell you that everything here seems to be ramping up in that direction. Then you have your first official preseason game for the LA Galaxy on Saturday, February 15th. That's a doubleheader. Chicago Fire versus Colorado Rapids will kick off at 12 p.m. And then at 3 p.m., it's the LA Galaxy versus Toronto FC. I would suggest you go and make a day of it and watch a bunch of soccer. That sounds like fun. And then Saturday, February 22nd. And of course, everybody remembers this day because we have our live show at the stadium that day. On 2/22 at 2 p.m., we will have our live show on the concourse. We'll start solidifying details as the month continues to tick away here and sort of tell you exactly where we'll be on the concourse, but you want to plan on being there at 2 p.m. But again, you should be there early because Toronto FC is playing against the Colorado Rapids at 12 p.m. The LA Galaxy will kick off against Chicago Fire at 3 p.m. And then guess what, boys and girls? That's a week from the start of the season, supposedly, except that, Kevin, maybe not. We've been talking a little bit before we started about the labor situation. We've certainly been updating people on the CBA and everything else, but I'm sure you have a nice fun update as well.
Well, not really. It just, we've been told all along that a lot of progress is being made and that the union and management seem to be negotiating in good faith and seem to be kind of on the same side. I'm hearing that a recent meeting kind of got blown up and that the management side is now starting to dig in their heels a little bit. It surprised a lot of people. It felt like an agreement was going to happen before the CBA expires January 31st. And they felt like there was a good chance an agreement would get done before January 31st. This may not be related at all, but I was talking to some players with the Seattle Sounders over the weekend, and they're down training in Southern California. I talked to them on Saturday, and they were supposed to have a union meeting. That's someone from the union. They travel to all the training camps and meet with the players during training camp. Their meeting was supposed to be Saturday afternoon, and it was abruptly canceled. I don't know if that has anything to do with this latest little snafu, but there is another meeting scheduled I believe tomorrow, sometime this week, another meeting scheduled, and we'll see if any progress gets made. But if not, the 31st is the deadline. And when you look at it, everyone has a little bit to lose with this. There's really no winners when if there would be a work stoppage. Now, just to make sure everyone understands what happens, they can continue if both sides decide that they're negotiating and that there's a chance for an agreement. They can continue working under the rules from the old CBA. There has to be some rules in place. If a player gets hurt during training camp, if somebody gets cut, there are rules about how that's handled. What do they get paid? Who pays for the travel expenses? All that. So there has to be some sort of CBA in place. If they don't have a new one by February 1st, both sides can agree to work under the auspices of the old one. If they don't do that, that's when you get into the labor stoppage, where either the management comes in and says, we're not going to abide by the old CBA, we're going to lock the gates, you guys can't come in and train, or the players say, we don't like the old CBA, we're not going to train until we get a new one. I don't think it's going to happen. I think both sides feel good about this. I don't think there's going to be a lockout, but if things did go south a little bit, I mean, think of all the things that you're losing, all the growth in MLS, largest attendance ever last year, all these new teams coming in, Inter Miami with David Beckham, Chicharito here, the great season that LAFC had last year. That's got a lot of attention. Atlanta's attendance, the new deal with Liga MX to have their all-stars play here, the new tournaments that they have going on. And remember, CONCACAF Champions League starts in mid-February. There's a good chance that the players or management might say, we're not going to allow the players to go play in those games unless we have an agreement. So there's a lot on the line that needs to be done in very short order if those CONCACAF Champions League games are going to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, and we talked about February 29th and, the chances that the LA Galaxy's first game against the Houston Dynamo could be canceled. That's all a possibility. So
there's another one, Chicharito going to Houston.
Yes.
Does MLS really want to not have that game played?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. No, you're sitting there, and what a big kickoff that now becomes, and even more. And Houston Dynamo fans are ticked off that the Houston didn't try to make a move for Chicharito as well. So it's one of those things you look at and say there's a lot to lose from a lot of different sides. I still have always felt that the players have wanted to flex their stoppage muscle, that they wanted to sort of see if they could hurt the owners. They've never done it, and this may be the time that they flex that muscle, whether that's good or bad. It'll certainly be interesting. I still imagine right now that you would still get a 34-game season by making up some of those games, and we talked about a congested schedule last year. There'll be a congested schedule this year if that happens as well. It's already a congested schedule whenever you throw in Leagues Cup and U.S. Open Cup and CONCACAF Champions League and everything else that comes into these things. But it's just, again, it's now time. We talked about it earlier in the month, and we said, listen, this is how negotiations go. You always make progress at the beginning because it's the little things, the things that aren't contentious. It's the things that you agree on, and you can check those off, and you can move down the list really fast. And then all of a sudden it comes to the things that you always knew were going to be difficult, but they're last remaining on the list, and now this is the stuff that you're really going to have to hammer out and sort of figure out. And so that's where these work stoppages, that's where all of a sudden things can come slam shut very quickly. That's where you can get a lockout. That's where you can get a strike. So that stuff could be coming to a head. I don't expect it to come to a head on January 31st, and I don't expect it to influence anything as you go through probably the middle of February. But as you get closer to February 29th and the start of the season, that's when things I feel like will really sort of ratchet up. And I feel like that everybody seems that there's enough to say, yeah, we'll work under the current CBA and continue things forward. But then there has to be a want, and there has to be pressure in order to actually get people to give in to what needs to be given into in order for a deal to actually be made. And so,
well, there's a couple of things about that. First of all, the last two CBAs, the league came within hours or days, certainly days, of a strike, of the season not starting on time, and cooler heads prevailed, and it did. The players felt on both occasions that they gave up too much. And I think the players felt the first time that the league was still kind of in its infancy, and they didn't want to hurt the league. They didn't want to damage the league. It wasn't in a good place financially. I think last time the players felt like they had made some progress and that the league needed to be a little more generous. And if you remember, the league said that we don't have any money, and then right after the CBA, they came out with the idea of TAM money.
Right.
So I think the players felt duped on that. The players now look at TAM money and say, what they don't like about it is it's money that's they're allowed to spend. The teams are allowed to spend. It comes from the league, but there's so many rules about how it can be spent that a mid-level, American player, a guy like say Daniel Steres, doesn't make enough money to be a DP, and he can't get any of that TAM money. The Galaxy are told they have 1.5 million or whatever to spend in TAM money, but they have to use it in certain circumstances. And a Daniel Steres or a David Bingham, those guys don't get that money. And so the players look at that and say, look, if the money's there, let the teams decide how they want to spend it.
Right.
And so that's an issue that the players are talking about. They're talking about charter flights. I think this time, what's different this time is I think the players have come to the conclusion, look, MLS is healthy. Look at the attendance. Look at the billion-dollar owners, the billionaire owners we're getting, these filled stadiums, TV rights. Things are going really well, and they're going really well because players come out to see the players. They don't come out to see the owners. They come out to see the players play, and the players feel like now's our time to stand up and demand our fair share. And I think they're right about that. There's one thing I just mentioned in passing, which may not mean anything because I don't think this person is necessarily in a position to know, but I was asking some Galaxy officials about that first game in Houston. And when I go on the road with the Galaxy, a lot of times I try to fly on the team flight because it's a commercial flight, and I just find out what flight they're taking, and I buy a ticket on that flight, and it's no problem. The Galaxy don't care. It's a commercial flight. Anyone can fly on that flight. So I was asking about the Houston flight, when are you guys leaving, what airline you fly, and all that stuff. And they said, well, we don't know yet. It could be a charter. And that was the first time I'd heard anyone actually think about the possibility that there could be charter flights. I don't think MLS teams are going to fly charter every flight. It'd be ridiculous to fly to San Jose on a charter flight.
Right.
But one of the possibilities was I heard if you travel more than one time zone or more than 2,000 miles or whatever, that there might be the possibility of teams using charters. So the fact that the Galaxy official mentioned we don't know about our commercial flight yet because it might be a charter, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly a big talking point. We know that was one of the big talking points that the union possibly might go after. So again, just all very interesting stuff going on all around the LA Galaxy. We'll, of course, have more updates for you as we go. But is there anything else, Kevin, you want to touch on before we head on out of here?
Oops, I think I should probably go to the doctor soon.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably should. You're coughing. You're having all sorts of fun. So yeah, you should probably do that. We don't need a deceased panda. All right. So why don't you go ahead and take care. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and tell you that we will be back on Thursday, of course. Thursday is a great day to have a live show, and we're going to have a live show for you, so make sure that you check that out. Eric the Portuguese Hammer will be in the studio with me, and we'll be rocking and rolling with that. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at KBaxter11, and of course, head on over to LATimes.com for all of his soccer coverage, covering soccer in Southern California, U.S. men's national team, women's national team, soccer in general, right there, LATimes.com. He's their soccer writer. Make sure that you give him a read. All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast, where you can find me. And then please head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Larry Morgan has a great notebook up on this Monday, so you're going to want to check that out as soon as you possibly can. And of course, we're going to have all of our podcasts, all of our videos, all that stuff is right there. Any news that happens with the LA Galaxy, we'll have it there as well. All right, for Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.